All right, so get ready to dive into some seriously creepy Norse mythology because today, well, we're tackling the Draugr.
Oh, yes.
You know, those creatures that are often compared to zombies?
Right, right.
Well, buckle up because as we'll discover, they are so much more than just mindless monsters.
What's fascinating about the Draugr is that they provide this incredible window into the deepest fears and beliefs of the Vikings. It's like holding up a dusty mirror to their entire worldview.
You've probably seen their pop culture cousins, you know, shambling hordes in video games.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even those bone-chilling White Walkers from Game of Thrones.
Right.
But we're going beyond those familiar tropes to uncover what makes the Draugr unique.
And the sagas, those ancient Icelandic stories, they give us a far richer and, dare I say, more chilling portrait of these undead beings. They were strategic even. Imagine holding a grudge for centuries.
Oh, wow.
Well, the Draugr could.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay.
We keep hearing Draugr, but there are also these other terms. Apterganga, hogbui. It's like a crash course in Viking vocabulary. What do these words actually tell us about the creatures themselves?
Good point. The terms highlight different facets of these beings. Draugr is our broad term.
Okay.
But Apterganga, meaning, again, walker, emphasizes the reanimated corpse aspect. These weren't ethereal beings, they were back with a vengeance, and they were physical. Then there's hogbui, or borrow dweller,
Right.
which points to their connection to burial mounds and the treasures buried within.
It's like they were obsessed with protecting their stuff even in death. And the fact that we see variations in these terms and even different spellings depending on the source just shows how widespread these stories were.
Absolutely. These weren't just campfire tales. These beliefs were woven into the fabric of their lives. And speaking of those beliefs, imagine yourself walking through a dark forest. The air grows cold, and a stench hits you like rotting flesh mixed with something ancient and off. That, my friend, is your cue to run because you might be facing a Draugr.
And you would not want to bump into one of these creatures in a dark alley,
Right.
or anywhere else for that matter. The sagas describe them as bloated with a bluish-black skin tone and possessing superhuman strength.
We're not talking your average zombie shuffle here.
Oh, no.
The sagas tell of them tossing boulders like pebbles, crushing a man with a single blow. In Grettir's saga, there's a story about a Draugr named Glamour who could even swim through frozen ground as if it were water.
Glamour. Okay, for those who haven't had the pleasure of diving into the world of the sagas,
Yeah.
who was this Glamour and what made him so tough?
Well, Glamour was a shepherd who died far from home.
Okay.
And as we'll see, that distance, that inability to be buried properly, it played a role in him becoming this terrifying Draugr. He was known for his incredible strength, even for a Draugr, and for the chilling curse he laid upon the hero, Grettir.
A curse. Wait, so they weren't just driven by a mindless urge to bite?
No.
They could plan, strategize, even curse their enemies.
Exactly. This intelligence is what truly sets them apart from your typical movie monster. They were driven by potent emotions. Anger, greed, a thirst for revenge.
Wow.
And they weren't afraid to hold a grudge, even for centuries if they had to.
So we've got Glamour, the super strong shepherd-turned-Draugr, swimming through frozen earth and laying curses on people. You'd think with that kind of power, they'd be almost impossible to stop.
You're right to be wary. They were incredibly tough, but not invincible.
Okay.
And this is where things get really interesting, because defeating a Draugr wasn't as simple as just landing a lucky blow.
Let me guess. Your standard silver sword and garlic cloves weren't going to cut it here. No need to call Van Helsing for this job.
Not quite. We're dealing with creatures deeply rooted in Norse mythology, which has its own set of rules. Remember, these stories predate those later folklore elements. To truly put a Draugr down, you needed to get creative, and by creative, I mean pretty drastic.
Okay, I'm all ears. What did it take to stop a creature that could swim through solid ground?
Decapitation was a good start. Imagine trying to fight without your head.
Yeah.
Not easy, even for a Draugr. But to really make sure they stayed down, you needed fire. Burning the body to ashes was considered the most effective method.
Wow, talk about overkill. But I guess when you're dealing with something that defies death, you want to be thorough. It's almost like those burial rituals they practiced, binding the limbs, weighing down the body. It was like they were trying to physically trap the spirit inside.
Exactly. They understood these weren't just monsters to be slain, they were a force to be contained. And there was always that lingering fear that the Draugr could actually create more of their kind.
Wait, It gets worse. So not only do you have to deal with one vengeful spirit, you might have to fight off an entire undead army. How did they even become Draugr in the first place?
Well, that's a question that has fascinated scholars for centuries. It seems there wasn't one single path to becoming a Draugr. Sometimes it was a result of a person's deeds in life, unresolved grudges, unfulfilled oaths, or even just a really bad attitude.
So basically, don't be a jerk, or you might come back as a vengeful spirit.
Got it.
But what about people like Glamour? It sounds like he was just minding his own business, herding his sheep, and then, bam, undead shepherd. What happened there?
Sometimes it was a matter of circumstance. Dying far from home, like Glamour, or suffering a violent, dishonorable death could increase your chances of becoming a Drogsgo. There's a chilling story in a Bigja saga about a shepherd who gets his neck broken by a Draugr. Guess what?
What?
He comes back as one himself the next night.
Okay, now that is terrifying. It's like this dark mirror image of their beliefs about Valhalla. You die a glorious death in battle, you go to feast with the gods, but die a dishonorable death. Let's just say your afterlife accommodations are a little less luxurious.
And this idea of the Draugr spreading, multiplying it, tapped into a very real fear for the Vikings, the fear of societal collapse. Remember, these were people who relied on their communities for survival. The thought of those bonds being shattered, of neighbors turning on each other, it was a fate almost as terrifying as death itself.
So it's not just about individual monsters. It's about the potential for chaos and the breakdown of everything they held dear, and the fact that it could be spread through a simple touch, a bite that just adds to the horror. It's like their version of a zombie apocalypse centuries before the first zombie movie.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that this fear wasn't limited to the ancient world. Even today, we see echoes of it in our own anxieties about pandemics, societal unrest, and the fragility of the world as we know it.
It's like these ancient stories are tapping into something primal, something universal about the human experience. But before we spiral into an existential crisis, let's shift gears for a moment and explore how the Draugr, for all its monstrous qualities, actually reveals a lot about the Vikings themselves. So we've gone grave robbing with Grettir,
He's a brave one, that Grettir.
dodged Glamour's curse,
Not an easy feat, let me tell you.
and learned that a well-placed torch is your best bet when facing a Draugr.
Practical advice, always good to have.
But this is where it gets really interesting. We've talked about how terrifying these creatures are, but what can they tell us about the Vikings themselves?
That's the beauty of mythology, isn't it? It reflects the culture that created it. The Draugr, for all its monstrous qualities, is a mirror reflecting the anxieties and beliefs of the Vikings.
Okay, I'm all ears. What can a rotting, vengeful corpse tell us about a society of warriors and explorers?
Well, think about it. The Vikings were a people who prized strength, honor, a good burial, and strong community bonds.
Right.
The Draugr represents a terrifying inversion of all those ideals.
So it's like a cautionary tale: live a good life, die a good death, and for the love of Odin, make sure you're buried properly, or you might just come back as one of these guys.
Exactly. No pressure or anything.
Yeah.
But it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
Remember how they dealt with Draugr outbreaks? It wasn't just about a lone hero. It was about the entire village banding together, using their collective knowledge and strength to drive back the darkness.
That's right. It was a team effort. From the rituals performed by the village wise woman to the burliest warrior wielding the axe.
And that need for community, for shared responsibility in the face of danger, it speaks volumes about their values. They knew that facing something as terrifying as a Draugr required more than just brute force. It required unity and wisdom.
It's fascinating how these ancient stories, as fantastical as they may seem, offer us these glimpses into a culture so different from our own. But at the same time, we can see echoes of our own anxieties reflected in their fears. The fear of disease, the need to honor the dead, the consequences of greed and envy. These are timeless themes that transcend cultures and eras.
Precisely. And that's the power of myths like the Draugr. They connect us to those primal fears, to the things that keep us up at night, even centuries later.
I don't know about you, but I'll never look at a burial mound the same way again. So if you take anything away from this deep dive, it's this. Honor the dead. Check your greed at the tomb entrance. And maybe invest in a good torch, just in case.
And never underestimate the power of a good story to both terrify and teach us, because sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that reveal the most about ourselves.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of the Draugr. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and for goodness sakes, sleep with one eye open.